Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to my DFS preview for the 2022 AT&T Byron Nelson. My name is Eric, and here at SweetSpotDFS, it's all about targeting the optimal lineup every single week. So here in this preview, we're going to go over all the stats that are going to be important to do just that. Which means we'll look at the golf course, the tournament information, past optimal lineups, as well as diving into the bucket system, which will give us our best insight as to which stats matter and which do not. And if you're unfamiliar with the bucket system, I have a link in the description below that'll get you straight to a video explaining all about it. If you haven't seen it yet, go watch it. Now, I'm also going to include a review of last week's tournament in all these previews going forward. Primarily because it saves me time every single week, but it also is going to provide some insight for you guys to see how well the sweet spot process did last week and how to apply it to this week's tournament. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's going to be like maybe 5 minutes, and then we'll move on with the rest of the preview. But first, I'll remind you guys of all the giveaways that I'm running. First being a subscriber giveaway. Now, I have a goal of 400 subscribers. You can see it on the screen right there. If we reach 400 subscribers by the end of this week, I'm going to give $25 away. And if you want a free entry into this giveaway, you got to be subscribed and you got to comment down below. I don't care what you comment, but if you need a topic, just give me your favorite golfer you're going to anchor your lineups around this week. Now, if we don't hit 400 subscribers this week, I'm going to rerun it next week, but I'm going to shave $5 off of it. So instead of 25, it'll be worth 20. And all of your entries that you've applied this week, I'm going to just push to next week. So nothing gets lost. So it's worthwhile to always participate on all the videos that I produce. That way you get a better chance to win whatever giveaway that I'm running. Now, I'm going to continue to do this until either we get down to $10 for the giveaway or we do hit that 400 subscriber mark. So it's up to you guys. Help grow the channel. Let's get to 400 subscribers by the end of the week. And one of you lucky people are going to win $25. Now, the second giveaway that I'm doing is a Prize Picks giveaway. If you want a chance to play Prize Picks for free, all you got to do is sign up using the promo code SweetSpot and put $20 in your account. Now, I know that sounds weird. If you want to play for free, you put $20 in. That doesn't make any sense. Well, I'm going to give you $20 back the very, very next day. So you will have to wait 24 hours for it to happen, but you will get your $20 back. Not only that, but Prize Picks will match your initial deposit up to $100. So that 20 will turn into 40. And it'll only cost you sign up information as well as that initial deposit. Now, you can always take advantage of that deposit match as well. You don't have to just put 20 in. You could put $100 in. And then they'll match you. You'll have another 100 in there. So you have 200 total. And I'm going to give you $20 back. So it really only cost you 80. So link is in the description below. Check it out. If you haven't signed up yet, it's a really fun way to play fantasy sports. And I produce videos on this every Wednesday night, giving you my favorite picks for rounds 1 and my strategies for rounds 2, 3, and 4. So highly suggest you guys go do that. Now, I'm also providing a cheat sheet, which is also in the description below. A link to that page will be available. It includes the dream sheet that I cover in all of my videos. So what you see on the screen right now, it's going to include all of this information. You can see that there, as well as the bucket system. So I will also include the bucket system for this week's tournament in that cheat sheet as well. I've already updated it, so it is good to go. So if you want to use that for your own research purposes, highly, highly encourage you guys to go do that. I'm also going to provide a optimizer. Now, I usually don't like to give out the optimizer until the tee times are set, because otherwise I would just have to resend it to you as an updated version. There's no point in sending you the optimizer now. But if you are interested in the optimizer, you got to be subscribed to the channel. You still got to comment down below, just like the subscriber giveaway. But you're also going to have to actually email me at sweetspotdfs@gmail.com, because most of you guys haven't set your YouTube information to public, so I can't see your email addresses. So you're going to have to email me and just say, hey, I'm interested in using the optimizer this week, and I will send it to you once those tee times come in and I update the optimizer to send out to you guys. I will also be showcasing it in the strategy video tomorrow. So if you want to see how it works, go check out the strategy video tomorrow. I think that's all that I have for giveaways. Right. Oh, one last thing. You might have noticed, and I've talked about this before, but you can see on the bar right above my finger, if you just keep going left, you'll see new subscriber, top commenter. you get the top commenter by commenting the most on any of my videos. So if you want to see your name appear there every single week, that's all you got to do. It doesn't matter like what you comment, or well, it kind of does. Like, I'm not going to just give it to somebody who just puts random letters in there. If you're having an ongoing conversation with me or anybody else that's there, I'm going to give you that top commenter spot. And if you want that new subscriber spot, all you got to do is set your information like to public, so I can see that you're subscribed to my channel. You wouldn't believe how many people have that set to private. Like, I think out of the last 8 subscribers from last week to this week, only one of you guys have that set to public. So Dustin Drexel, thank you for subscribing. Your name's right there, primarily because you didn't set your information to private when you subscribed to me. So I got to see that you subscribed to me. Otherwise, the other 7 guys, I'm sorry. I can't, or girls, I can't see your guys' subscriber information, so I can't put your name there. If you do want your name there, you can always email me providing proof that you're subscribed to me, and I'll certainly put your name there. I want to reward all of you guys. That's primarily most of the giveaway purposes, is to reward you guys for your participation. So anyways, those are all the giveaways. Very long-winded, but it's worth it, I think. All right, let's talk about this review of the Wells Fargo. I should have just kept the display on. So if I go to 2022, the dream sheet here, you can see Max Homa won this event. I was really high on Keegan Bradley. I really liked Cameron Young, but I won't lie. At $7,900, I really like Matt Kuchar. Now, in retrospect, when I compare Cameron Young to Matt Kuchar, kind of dumb. You know, I probably should have just played Cameron Young over Matt Kuchar and just be done with it. Like, that was the smart thing to do. As you know, I was trying to figure out which duos I wanted to play, and it was really down to Corey Connors and Keegan Bradley, or Corey Connors and Russell Henley, or Tony Finau and Keegan Bradley. Which obviously you don't see Corey Connors, you don't see Tony Finau up here, but you do see Rory McIlroy, and you do see Matthew Fitzpatrick, 2 10K golfers, 10K plus golfers. Now, they weren't in the optimal lineup, and we'll discuss that here shortly, but it's worth noting that I was projecting a 10K golfer to be inside the top 10. Sure enough, we have 2 of them. I chose the wrong 2, both of them, which was, it's sad, but oh well. Again, Max Homa's your winner, and it's really interesting because this golf course has only been used, well, I should say this. The last time this golf course was used, which was the TPC Potomac at the Wells Fargo Championship, just not to confuse you guys with with what's currently happening at the Byron Nelson, but TPC Potomac for the Wells Fargo. The last time TPC Potomac was used was in 2018-2017, so we really didn't have a lot of course history. But if I were to go to the 2022 page, where we'll talk about the optimal lineup and the GPP winning lineup, Keegan Bradley had a course history of 5. I think he played it twice in 2018 and 2017, and that was his average finish. And you see Steven Yeager there with the 13th, Anirban Lahiri with the 13th. So course history, just for the 2 years that we had it, kind of mattered, at least for those 3 golfers. And it didn't really hurt any of the other guys down here either. So I thought that was really interesting. And another thing to point out, I mean, Max Homa and Rory McIlroy do not have TPC Potomac course history. But if you were to use event history for the Wells Fargo Championship, both of these guys, I mean, Max is now a multiple winner at the Wells Fargo Championship. Rory's won this multiple times too. Is it just an event history thing now too? Like, does the Wells Fargo Championship really mean that much to either of these 2 guys? I mean, it was Max's first win, and maybe it was Rory's first win. I can't remember. But maybe they hold special places for these guys. I don't know. I'm not going to speculate about it, but I thought that was really interesting. Now, moving on past that, we don't need to talk about that anymore. I'm going to talk about the optimal lineup this week versus the GPP winning lineup. So I just hit a couple of columns that really have no importance as to what we're talking about. I always want to show you guys what's on the screen first before I hide it. So obviously you guys could see that. But your optimal lineup was Max Homa, Keegan Bradley, Cameron Young, Lonto Griffin, Steven Yeager, and Stuart Sink. So if we look at this from a salary perspective, 2 8K golfers, a 9K golfer, 2 7K golfers, and a 6K golfer. So very interesting makeup there. Never really have seen it. You left $2,100 on the table. I don't ever suggest doing that. That's just too much money to leave on the table. It invites way too many possibilities of lineups that you can create. So there's no point in leaving that much money on the table. It scored 534 points. Now your GPP winning lineup was Max Homa, Keegan Bradley, Cameron Young, and Steven Yeager. 4 guys in the optimal lineup. So really, really good. And then it was Johnny Vegas and Sergio Garcia. All 6 golfers inside the top 21. Very, very good lineup. That lineup scored 508.5 points. So it was 26 points away from the optimal, and it used up all but $400 of the salary. So that's pretty good, right? Well, I always like to look at what would be a realistic optimal. All 6 golfers have to be inside the top 10 and have to fit under that $50,000 threshold. Well, that's all the golfers that I have highlighted in green right here. So we got Max Homa, Bradley, Young. So 2 8Ks, a 9K. But we're also including Matt Fitzpatrick, who's a 10K, and then dropping to a 10 and a 6. So to reread that, it's a 10K, a 9K, 2 8s, a 7, and a 6. It's kind of unique. You don't really see it, a lineup built like that. Now that used up all $50,000 of the salary. And here's the big rule here. In order for it to be a realistic optimal, it has to beat the $5 GPP. And sure enough, it scored 529 points. It is 5 points away from the optimal lineup, and it still clears the GPP winning lineup by, close to 20 points. Yeah, it's 20 points on the button. 20 and a half. So either way, yeah, we could have done that. We could have went with a 10-9-8. I guess it was a 10-9-8-8, 7-6. You know me. I like to do the traditional build, the 10-9-8, 7-7-6. Start there, and then you can probably pivot your way out of it, and that's one way you could have gotten to it. You could have went 10-9-8, 8, 7-6. So anyways, it was there with the salary builds. Now going into the bucket system, I like to include this column over here that lets us know what the successes are. Now there's a formula that's driven in here, and let me explain it. Let me hide this. Try to get this all on one page. I think I need to hide this year as well as average year. Okay. So basically, I project every single week how many golfers out of a bucket is going to finish inside the top 10 or in the optimal lineup. So I have a formula over here that's looking at these 2 columns, actually these 3 columns, whether or not they're in the top 10 in the optimal lineup or in the sweet spot optimal, which is that realistic optimal. So if it's a yes, it's going to obviously provide it a Y. Like if it passes, it'll provide a Y. And if it doesn't, it'll provide it an N, a no. As I scroll down here, every single bucket passed. And here's the thing. I didn't include course history. I didn't include last year buckets. Like there's just no point. Obviously, there wasn't a tournament played at TPC Potomac last year. So this is all moot. Like we don't need to look at any of this. We can hide this, in fact. But looking at the rest of them, if we're looking at the last week buckets, I had told you guys that I thought having a top 20, a missed cut, and a did not play would be important in your lineups. Now, if you can see here, top 10, a missed cut, and did not play were the only finishes inside the top 10 of this tournament. Let me restate that. Those were the only finishes from last week's tournament that finished inside the top 10 of this tournament. And I kind of projected it. It's one of those things that happens every single week. You typically always have someone from the top 20 from the week before, a missed cut from the week before, as well as a did not play. Now, you can see there was no optimal lineup for a guy who missed the cut last week, but in the sweet spot optimal, we did. But it also kind of changes things a little bit too, because if you do use a sweet spot optimal, we don't have anybody who top 20 last week in it. So it's kind of weird. But you do have top 10s, you do have missed cuts, and you do have did not plays. And all of this is validating based off of the projections that you see here. If it hits, it's perfect. If not, then it's no big deal. Or I should say, then it'll say no. But yeah, and then course history hit too. And I didn't even follow course history. I did include it. I included the 2 years of course history. And all the projections that I have, you can see they all worked out. So all in all, the bucket system was 100% correct last week. I don't know how easy it would have been to make those lineups, but hey, if you followed, it worked out. So that's the review. Went a lot longer than I wanted it to. But either way, there you have it. now let's jump into this week's tournament. AT&T Byron Nelson, established in 1944 in McKinney. Well, it was established in 1944. It's been played at a bunch of different golf courses. Prior to TPC Craig Ranch, which is where it's played this week, it was at Trinity Forest or Trinity National Forest or something like that. That golf course for 2 years in 2019, 2018. Prior to that, it was at Las Colinas, and it was there until 2013. My data only goes back to 2013, so I really couldn't tell you how far it actually went back. But it kind of does go all over the place. It plays at different golf courses. I'm not sure if TPC Craig Ranch is here to stay, but either way, that's where we're currently being played. But this tournament is pretty old. Field size 156 players. It's going to be hard to find 6 to 6 through the cut. And the cut will be top 65 in ties like it is every single week. I didn't include an average win score and average cut score because we only have 1 year's worth of data at this golf course, so there's no point. Now, the strength of field, as I've calculated, it's at 399. That can obviously change. It's usually within 10 points of the OWGR. I still have yet to figure out how that's calculated, the way like as it is on the OWGR, but I'm always within 10 points. So it's actually it's a fairly strong strength of field this week. Your weather as of Monday night, 92 degrees Thursday, 92 degrees Friday. Going to be warm. And it's going to be kind of windy. I think I saw gusts on Thursday up to 25 miles an hour. Currently, the average wind, it's forecasting between 10 to 20 miles an hour, which can make scoring a little bit more challenging. And then Friday, it's 10 to 15. Now, again, this is Monday night. We all know weather changes within the minute, within the hour, within the day. I should say forecasts do. So always check Wednesday night. I just like to bring it up now just to give you a head start, a little idea of what to expect. Who knows? We'll see how it goes Wednesday night. Whenever I do my prize picks video, I usually go through winfinder.com during that video to show you what it looks like for that Thursday round. Golf course, TPC Craig Ranch, architect Tom Weiskopf. Now, why mention any of this? You can always use those as data points to do your research. See, you could use Tom Weiskopf as one of your data points just to see who does well. Because most architects have a certain way about building their golf courses. And there's going to be certain strengths and weaknesses for each golfer on these golf courses. So you can use that as a data point. It shouldn't be an end-all be-all. Maybe it's a tiebreaker, or you can just add it to a scoring model. Doesn't matter. It's just whatever you want to do. I just want to provide the data points for you guys. Personally, I don't think it matters all that much. But if it was like a Pete Dye golf course, I would say it would matter. So do with that as you will. I'm not leaning one way or the other. It doesn't really matter to me. Now, this golf course is a par 72, 7,400 yards, just a hair under 75. And we have an assortment of grasses on this golf course, which I find really, really interesting. So you have in the rough and on the tees, the tee boxes, Bermuda grass. And then in the fairways, you have zoysia, which and then on the greens, you have bent grass. Like, I don't get it. I don't get why it's these three things of grass. Obviously, it works out. What tends to happen at golf courses over time is seed runs into each other. So you're going to have zoysia mixed in with Bermuda in the rough. You're going to have zoysia mixed in with your greens. Now, most superintendents can regulate this pretty well, but it's really weird to have those three strains of grass. Zoysia is kind of a fluffy grass. Like, if the ball sits on top of it, it can provide quite a bit of a flyer lie. It's usually stickier, or I shouldn't say stickier. It's pretty sticky and soft. Like, I don't remember zoysia ever being firm. It's like a spongy type of feeling that you have on zoysia. And Bermuda is just gnarly. So in the rough, like, I would love to say, hey, use these grasses for your approach and your around the green stats, but then I also don't know where a lot of these golfers are going to be hitting their golf balls from. You know, like, they're going to hit in the Bermuda next to the green. Is it going to be completely Bermuda, or is it going to have a little bit of zoysia in it? Is it going to have a little bit of bent grass? I don't know. So I don't know. I think the greens with bent grass is probably the only way to look at it, because putting is going to be 50% of most of these guys' rounds of golf. So just use bent grass. Like, average results or bent grass putting does not matter to me. And then so I did a preview last year that had a different shot shape chart. Disregard that one. I reviewed it again and I realized there weren't as many holes that required certain shot shapes that I had previously had. But if you wanted to know, I think I had 7 holes that had a fade as approach from last year's video. And then I think I had 3 holes where there was a draw on approach. So it was like a shot shaper's haven, but mostly for golfers who fade the golf ball. And then if we were to actually use last year's tournament, let me go to 2019, or I'm sorry, 2021. And we go to the golfer information that I have here. You can see a lot of these guys hit a fade. Now, I didn't have some of these shot shapes for the other golfers. I really couldn't tell you off the top of my head what some of these guys hit. But you can see most of them are dominated by fades to begin with. So it wouldn't be a bad thing to maybe use that as a tiebreaker between 2 of your favorite golfers. It doesn't require a shot shape based off of any trees in the way, like any obstacles in the way, but how the greens sit, there's definitely an advantage to hit a fade in most of these, into most of these greens. So just keep that in mind. It's not an end all be all. It's just something to consider when looking at your players. Okay. So now that we got all of that set, let's look at some past optimal lineups. So keep in mind, 2017, 2018, and 2019 were all played at different golf courses. I guess, in fact, if we were to go here, you can see Trinity Forest was in 2019 and 2018. TPC Las Colinas was 2016 back to 2013. So when we look at 2017 optimal lineup, just remember this is at TPC Colinas, but what you have is a 10K golfer, 8K, 3 7s, and a 6. Now, you would leave $2,500 on the table. A more realistic lineup I have highlighted in blue, which would use 49,300, and that'd be a 10K, 9K, 8, 2 7s, and a 6. Go figure, right? Now that's not, all 6 golfers inside the top 10, but we really can't make it work out to be north of that $49,000 mark. That's how I always like to build my lineups. I don't like to leave a lot of money on the table because, again, you leave a lot of lineups, like lineup combinations, available to you the more money you leave on the table, making it so much more difficult to hit the right lineup. So I don't like doing that, but you do the 10-9-8, 7-7-6, and you would have had a really good lineup. You'd had all 6 of your golfers inside the top 13. It's probably going to win a GPP. Now, I don't have the GPP recorded in 2017, unfortunately, so I can't prove it. Now, in 2018, we moved to the Trinity Forest Golf Club, and this optimal only left $300 on the table. And you would have had a 9K, 9K, 8K, 2 7s, actually make that 3 7s. So a very, very balanced lineup. 2 9s, an 8, and 3 7K golfers. So we're already looking at a really weird combination of optimal lineups. And then in 2019, again at the Trinity Forest Golf Course, we had a 10K plus, 9K, 8K, 7, 6, 6 as your optimal. Again, a lot of lineups to me are that 10-9-8, 7-7-6 variety, and you just kind of switch out one of those numbers, whether it's a 7 for an 8 or a 7 for a 6, or maybe a 6 for a 7. So you'd have a 10-9-8, 7-7-7. I think if you start 10-9-8, 7, you're going to be just fine. And then you can figure out if you want another 8, another 7, another 6, whatever you want. It's good to start there when building your lineups. Let me double check something. I had Peter Uline, I guess, as well. I don't have the points, I don't think, recorded. So I don't know how I got to an optimal lineup there. But either way, it still would have been a 10-9-8, 7-7-6. Or it would have been, this one would have been 10-9-8, 7-6-6. All right, in 2021, I do have the GPP winning lineup recorded in this one, and I also have the optimal, but I really only care about the optimal. So we have a 10-9-8-7-7-6 as our optimal lineup, and we left $800 on the table. Your GPP winning lineup left $100 on the table, and that was a 10-9-8-7-7 6. So that he had the winner. But again, 10, 9, 8, 7, 7, 6. Again, I always think start your lineups 10, 9, 8, 7. And then figure the rest out from there. The remaining 2 spots. You want to include another 8K with a 6 or an 8 with a 7 if you can even do that. Or whatever you'd like. Maybe you replace one of the 10Ks or the 10K with a 9K. Totally up to you. The world is your oyster. So now that we've gone through past optimal lineups, now it's time to get into the bucket system. And again, if you're unfamiliar with it, there is a link in the description below that'll get you to a video that'll explain all about it. But I'm not going to explain much about how these numbers are. We're just going to talk about the buckets. So we're going to start with our last year buckets. So what did they do last year? Does it matter? Is it important what they did last year at this event? Well, as I'm seeing it now, having a top 20 finish last week is somewhat important. We've seen it every single year at least once. So dating back to 2014, 2013 I wouldn't have because I don't have 2012 data. But in 2014, starting there and going back, every single year we've seen at least one golfer from the year before who was in the top 20 finish inside the top 10 at that event, at that next event. So keep that in mind. And my projections are kind of very, very similar. Now we have 15 golfers in that bucket this week. We typically have 15 at this event. So everything is matching up. The strength of field isn't super strong, but I still think we're going to see at least one golfer who top 20 last year inside the top 10. Now, I'm only projecting a max of 2, so I wouldn't ever go over 2, but I feel more comfortable with just 1. How about anyone in that 20 to 40 range? No, not really. 66% of the time we see a golfer inside the top 10. That's not terrible, but it's not great. And I'm only projecting somewhere between 0 to 2. Same applies for a golfer who's in that 40 to 60 range. I'm still only projecting somewhere between 0 to 2. And again, that's a 66% frequency rate of having at least 1. And here's the big one. It's only ever seen a max of 1. So we have 12 golfers in that bucket this week. Do not pick more than 1. If you are interested in a golfer from last year's tournament, last year's AT&T Byron Nelson, who finished in that 40 to 60 range, just pick 1. That 60 to 80 range you can almost completely ignore. I don't think we'll have a golfer inside the top 10 there. Missed cuts actually from the year before aren't extremely successful. We have 25 golfers in that bucket this year. Strength of field is super low, which means it's not a quality bucket, but the frequency rate of seeing at least one top 10 golfer is pretty high. 83% usually means what, like 6 out of the last 7 years? No, that would be too much. I think it's 5 out of the last 6 years where we've seen at least 1 inside the top 10. And we've seen a max up to 3. I just don't know if this year is going to be the year. Now, your big bucket, the one that just kind of dwarfs all of them in this last year range or the last year stats, are golfers who didn't play last year. They seem to have the leg up. Very strong strength of field this year, 172. That's 43% of the strength of field in this field. And we're projecting somewhere between 2 to 5. And we've seen at least 2 every single year. So I would target a lot of your golfers who did not play this event last year. Maybe find more of your high quality golfers. But this bucket's very large. There's 84 golfers in it when the average is usually 73. So we could see a random guy from this event with a stud, be inside the top 10, and you'd probably want them both. Or we might see 2 studs. Who knows? Entirely up to you guys. We're projecting 2 to 5. Just remember that. Now, from here, we'll go to last week, since these are your most recent stats for like both course history and recent form. Does playing in last week's tournament matter? Well, I guess as we see it, not really. And if there was a stat that really mattered more than another, it might be a missed cut. But nothing is projected very high. Everything's projected very low. Now we have 15 golfers who top 20 last week's event in this field, but it only equates for 10 points for the strength of field, which is insane. I'm actually inclined to go look to see who those guys are. So I just go here, clear this out. Again, you can do this within the optimal or in the cheat sheet in the description below. I'll sort this by salaries. And I mean, so Cameron Champ, Aaron Wise kind of lead this in the 8K range. And they really only have 2 points that go towards that strength of field each. So does Lonto, and that's it. But this is actually a really good bucket. I like a lot of the golfers here. I really don't know how they really fare when it comes to course fit. But Aaron Wise is number 11 in my model currently. So at $8,100, like, I don't mind loading up on Aaron Wise. Now, here's the thing. When we look at this bucket, I'm projecting somewhere between 0 to 2, but it's more close to 1 that we really want. And there's a 75% frequency rate, which is pretty good. I think that's 6 out of the last 8 years. We've seen at least 1 inside the top 10. So although the projection is very low, where we could see 0, I think we'll see 1. I really like Aaron Wise's chances, and if it's not him, I do like Cameron Champ. Like, those aren't bad choices. Probably stay away from these guys down here in the 6K range, but everyone else, I don't mind it. Steven Yeager, Lipsky, Kitayama. God, I almost said what everyone else does. Katayama. Kurt Kitayama. And I don't mind the other 4 guys here. Lonto, Davis Riley, I don't mind whatsoever. So, not terrible. Now, I really don't go through golfers usually, but it really, I was really interested to see, you know, why that strength of field was so low. I'm not going to go through the rest of these buckets with the players involved. 20 to 40, that range, not super great. There's 12 golfers in that bucket, and the strength of field is even lower than the other one. That 40 to 60 seems pretty dead as well. The 60 to 80 seems very dead as well. So I'm not too confident in any golfer from these buckets. So if they played last week, what I'm really looking for is a top 20 finish, a missed cut, although the missed cut isn't super high either, but mostly a did not play. So I'm looking for guys who took the week off last week to do well at this golf course or at this event. So we'll see if that transpires. Again, we had 100% success rate with the Wells Fargo Championship. So we're looking to, you know, feed off of that as well. All right, let's get into course history, which obviously kind of goes hand in hand with last year. When it comes to course history, I don't want to spend too much time here. Remember, we only have one event, and actually this should say event history because I did not actually provide course history. You know what? Scratch it. We're not going to look at course history buckets. There's no point. Really, there isn't any point. I'm not even going to spend any more time on it. Recent form buckets. So this is looking at the last 7 weeks and what their average finishing position is. So if they fall in these ranges, they are then in those buckets. So when I'm looking at this recent form 1, which is technically your best recent form, we're actually projecting somewhere between 1 to 2, which, remember, if this isn't actually over 2, this then drops to 0. So it's 0 to 2, but I'm feeling pretty confident. Strength of field is 93. We have 6 golfers in that bucket this year when we usually see 4. Pretty high success rate, and the frequency rate isn't terrible. So I don't mind grabbing someone who has really good recent form. And I don't mind grabbing 2 of them, but I'm probably just going to start with 1. And then, you know, when I'm picking golfers, if there's a second one that does show up, that's fine. But I'm not picking more than 2. The bulk of where we can see success is somewhere between that 20 to 80 range, which is going to include everybody. You know, it's 123 golfers. But if we cut them into 20th places, 20 to 40, we want somewhere between 1 to 3 of those golfers. We've only ever seen a max of 3 inside the top 10, but we've seen a max of 3 in the optimal lineup, and we see at least 1 every single year in the optimal lineup. So keep that in mind. The next bucket's actually even more important, that 40 to 60 range. So it's just middle of the pack recent form. We've seen a minimum of 2 in the optimal lineup with a max of 3. So we can almost just start right here with the projection 2 to 4, or 2 to 5, I should say, and say we're going to at least see 2. Maybe I cap it out at 3, but we can see up to 5. Not a very good chance, but we can see up to 5 from this bucket be inside the top 10. So it's probably where you want to start, but there's 51 golfers in that bucket. It's going to be really hard to choose which one to go with. And then the recent form 4 bucket is close. It's not as successful as those other 2 buckets. We are projecting somewhere between 0 to 2. There are 48 golfers, so this is a very volume-driven bucket. The frequency rate is actually pretty good, 87.5%. finishing inside the top 10, it's not terrible. So really start your lineups probably here and maybe consider a top 20. And maybe this is where we start. This is probably going to be a part of the anchor bucket tomorrow in the strategy video. Just because there's only 6 golfers in it. But also this will be a part of the anchor bucket too, recent form 2s. So keep all of that in mind when building your lineups. Just try to mix it up. You know, you don't want 6 golfers from one of these buckets. The max is going to be 5, and that's from the recent form 3 bucket. And really, I look at this decimal place here. Sorry, showing you the formula. But that 0.18, that to me is like there's an 18% chance that it will be 5, which to me isn't that great. I honestly think it's going to be somewhere between 2 to 3. I think 2 or 3, if you select 2 to 3 golfers from this bucket, you're in a good standing, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't do more than that though. And then going from here, I'm going to talk about salaries and strokes gain stats. We'll go with salaries first. Now, we already talked kind of about it during the optimal past optimal lineups, but just to provide a little bit more confidence in selecting players from each of these buckets. Now, we only have 4 in the 10K range, and believe it or not, it's not good enough to actually have the projection over 2. And we have seen 0 inside the top 10 before. We only see we've only seen, okay, hold on. In the optimal lineup, we've seen it 75%, where there was a 10K golfer in the optimal lineup. That's really good. The max of 1, so don't pair 2 10K golfers up together. But we have seen 0 one time. So do with that as you will. I probably will start at the 10K range because I do like Justin Thomas this week. I also like Scotty Scheffler this week. Jordan Spieth also has my attention. Not one of my favorites, but I wouldn't mind playing Jordan Spieth. And I don't really remember who the other 10K golfer is. Let's take a look. Dustin Johnson. Yeah, those 4 10K golfers obviously can win a tournament. Last week you had like Matt Fitzpatrick, Rory McIlroy, Corey Connors, and Tony Finau. And I think another one. I can't remember the 5th one. But you could make an argument that, like a Tony Finau is not going to win a golf tournament. Matt Fitzpatrick's not going to win a golf tournament. Here, the 4 golfers we see, they all can win golf tournaments. They're very solid golfers. So I'm probably, no matter what, still going to start with a 10K golfer. And then you can see the 9K and 8K range do not have a lot of confidence in those buckets. Neither one of them are over 2, although that 9K range is very close to being over 2. I'm still going to start my lineups 10, 9, 8. And 7, or 10, 9, 8, 7. I don't mind. But just keep in mind, not a whole lot of confidence between the 9 and 8K range. Just throwing that out there. And as well as with the 8K range, we do see 1 in the optimal lineup every single year. But you do have to take into consideration how weak that bucket is this year. With the strength of field being really low, it's 1 less golfer than we typically see. So it's just not providing, the greatest chance to finish inside the top 10. 7K range is where it's at, though. 2 to 4 golfers we are anticipating to be inside the top 10 or in the optimal lineup. Now, we've only seen 3 as a max in the optimal lineup, but we've seen at least 1. And we've seen at least 4 inside the top 10 every single year. So the 7K range is where it's at. That's probably where you want to start your lineups. And the 7K range, I looked at it prior to this video. It's not terrible. So I wouldn't mind using a 7K golfer. And then your 6K range, just use sparingly. Don't use more than 1 golfer, at least from each of these ranges. I guess you could go like a low 6K golfer. This is 6.4 and below, and this is 6.5 and above. So I wouldn't mind selecting 1 from each of these, maybe. If I'm doing two 6K golfers, I'm most likely doing it that way. There is a chance I do 2 high 6K golfers in my lineup, but it's a 6K range for a reason. It's extremely volatile. I would just, if you do pick one, or I should say this, if you do pick someone in the 6K range, pick it in the highest 6K and only pick 1 of them. You're probably not going to hurt yourself by only selecting 1. But again, we did see one optimal lineup that had 2 6K golfers in it, but they were from different ranges. As you can see, we haven't seen more than 2 in that high 6K range, and we haven't seen more than 2 in that low 6K range, but there was a year where there was 1 of each in the optimal lineup. So keep that in mind. And then the last one to look at is the strokes gained buckets. Now, everybody does their strokes gained stats nearly the same. They first determine if this golf course is a bomber golf course or an approach golf course or a short game specialist golf course, and then they use their strokes gained stats accordingly. But in order to hit the optimal lineup, you need to vary. You need to differ those. You need to differ players. Geez, I don't know what the hell I'm trying to say. You need to have a good mix of different types of golfers in your lineup to hit the optimal lineup. And it proves that every single week with the bucket system. So this year, when we look at strokes gained stats, pick 1 to 2 golfers, and it really should just be 0 to 2 golfers that have all strokes gained stats positive. Same thing applies for those that have positive off the tee, positive putting, and a negative stat in between. Those are your strokes gained 2 golfers. The main important one is, or the main important points here, positive off the tee, positive putting, and at least 1 negative stat in between. Because if there wasn't, then they would just be in the strokes gained 1 stat, right? So I just like to look at off the tee and putting. So when we go to strokes gained 3, where, you know, a very high projection and very high frequencies that we've seen inside the top 10 come from this bucket of plus or positive off the tee, negative putting. And it could be positive approach. Most of the time it's positive approach that's in this bucket. It could be negative approach. But the main points are positive off the tee, negative putting. We've seen at least 4 every single year. We are projecting somewhere between 2 to 4. We have 11 more golfers than we typically do in that bucket. And the strength of field is okay. It's fairly strong. Now, one other piece, we've only seen 1 to 3 in the optimal, I should say differently. We've seen at least 1 every single year in the optimal lineup from this bucket. And at a max, we've seen 3. Now, I don't really necessarily, hold myself to these numbers here. It's just more of a confidence feeling. I really use the projections the most. So 0 to 2, strokes gained 1, 0 to 2, strokes gained 2, 2 to 4, strokes gained 3, 0 to 2, strokes gained 4. So really, maybe we start with our strokes gained 3, pick 2 golfers from here, and then just sprinkle in 1 from each of these other buckets, and then just see where that last golfer that you need to put in your lineup, where it falls. But I'd probably stay away from those that are negative off the tee or that don't have strokes gained stats, as the buckets don't look super great for those. Now, strokes gained 5 has seen 2 golfers in the optimal lineup before at one time, 50% frequency rate. So I think I have 4 years of strokes gained data. I think I might have 2 years. Yeah, I only have 2 years. So this really isn't meaningful, as meaningful as we want it to be. But I will say this, whenever I create my lineups, I'm usually picking 1 from strokes gained 1, strokes gained 2, strokes gained 3, and strokes gained 4. And then the remaining 2, I just mix and match where I see fit. But I usually like to use these as guidelines as to never go over. So I'll never pick more than 2 strokes gained 1 golfers. I'll never pick more than 2 strokes gained 2 golfers, so on and so forth, as you can see. But that's going to wrap up the bucket system. There's no other buckets to talk about. Those are all the 6 stats that we use in the bucket system. Hopefully that helped you determine what kind of golfer that you want to be using. Again, I failed to mention this in the beginning. You could have followed me along using the cheat sheet and kind of highlighting your favorite players that fall under these buckets. Now, I'll go more in depth of the anchor buckets tomorrow and my favorite golfers from those buckets that I'll be building my lineups around. And I'll also provide my favorite duos that I want to build my lineups around as well. Because if we can knock out 2 golfers that we definitely want to anchor in our lineups, then selecting the remaining 4 is so much easier. It limits the amount of combinations you can make. And if you follow the bucket system to its entirety, it's also going to limit the amount of lineups you can create based off of the logic with that. So it's all about finding the right 2 golfers to build your lineups around. At least that's what I'm experimenting with. So we will see that in the strategy video. From here, I guess all I have to do is remind you guys of the giveaways that we're running. Subscriber giveaway, giving away $25 if we can reach 400 subscribers this week. If you want a free entry, be subscribed and comment down below. Again, give me your favorite golfer that you're going to anchor your lineups around this week. And then prize picks. If you want to play prize picks for free, sign up using the promo code SweetSpot, put $20 or make an initial deposit of $20, and then I'm going to refund you $20 the day after. And that way you're basically playing it for free. Prize Picks is going to match that deposit. So you'll have $40 to your account, and all it does, it's just going to cost you some sign up information. And like I said before, I mentioned the cheat sheet that's available to you guys. That's in a link in the description below. There's an optimizer that I'll be showcasing tomorrow. If you want access to that, be subscribed, comment down below, and then email me at sweetspotdfs@gmail.com saying you would like to use that optimizer. And once I get the tee times updated into the optimizer, I will send it your way. So that's all available to you, those 4 giveaways. And really, that's all that I have left. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.